find your groove. Find your groove. And I don't know if any of you remember Up With People back in the 60s or 70s. That's going to be the feel for it. Very wholesome, family entertainment, G-rated, but eye-popping. You know, we want to recreate certain Buffalo Bill and Calamity Jane and kind of have a hooting and hollering kind of an atmosphere on stage. Have it be a lot of fun. Have kids say, you know, this is more fun than staying home and playing a video game. So, Blood and Commerce on the Santa Fe Trail. There's a book in there. An honest look at the Santa Fe Trail, what led to it, and then what led to its demise, which was the coming of the railroad. So, the railroad becomes a metaphor for technology. The question is, the railroad, was it good or bad for the expansion of the West? Well, it depends who you ask. Technology, is it good or bad? Well, it depends what you do with it. In the case of the railroad, my great-great-grandfather, Duncan McFarlane, left Scotland to work on the railroad here in Kansas. So, but it was also where the buffalo were shot for sport and to deprive the Native Americans of their food source. So, depends who you ask. The question of the expansion of the railroad, I spoke with a man whose son had committed suicide at the age of 14. It wasn't done with depression. He was an extremely gifted young man, poet, musician, and he left a note behind. Said he wanted to see what it was like, out of curiosity. Well, so if you were, and what he did was he stood in front of a train. And so I talked with him, the father. This is just 2 years later. He's still grappling with what happened. So you ask him, the railroad, a good idea or a bad idea? Well, it affected him personally. Introducing Peter Parchak as Tommy J. Gunn, master of the Santa Fe Trail Delta Blues. He's a friend of mine from Boston. I would go see him 25 years ago when there were maybe 4 people in a club, and he put on a great show anyway. Well, now he's getting some notice, and Peter Parchak would be perfect to play Tommy J. Gunn. Featuring a cast of genuine guitar gunslingers of all genders. I add that because my nephew is now my niece, and so I'm getting used to the gender differences these days. And so Andre, who is now Noel, is an extremely talented banjo player. I want Noel to meet Joey Henry in the back there, who's also a very gifted banjo and ukulele player. With acclaimed baritone Tony Brown as Sam. Tony Brown is the founder of Piecing It Together, P-E-A-C-I-N-G, Piecing It Together. And my late grandmother, Edna Ruth, she died in 1976, but not without hearing Tony Brown sing. And she asked him to sing at her funeral, which he did. He was probably the only African American in that Mennonite church in Akron, Pennsylvania that day. He has since gone on to be artist in residence at Heston College for many years. And so he's actually on the board of the Bison Foundation. And then down here, when we start getting this musical up and running, we have 2 hashtags to bring attention to it. One is Guitars Not Guns. Guitars Not Guns. I can envision a partnership with Fender, you know, where maybe in a city like Chicago, where the murder rate is catastrophic, have some sort of creative gun exchange for a guitar. You know, the guitar is a very easy instrument to learn. You spend the rest of your life getting better at it, and I recommend it highly. And so I'd love for the musical to be known for coming into urban high schools and sending this strong message that, you know what, it's fun to play music really well. And I know some great guitar players who are the equivalent of gunslingers. What gunslingers used to be, shoot them up and spin the thing and shoot 6 bottles off the wall, these guitar players can do. And it'll be quite a spectacle. Bands, not gangs. Again, Chicago comes to mind. But what city doesn't have gangs these days? Hashtag bands, not gangs. Now, guitar gunslinging settles all disputes at Tommy J's, featuring the music of these blues greats. So, Tommy J has these 3 friends. That's kind of classic in stage productions. Job had 3 friends. A number of people you can think of had 3 friends. Well, these 3 friends provide kind of the inside look at what electric blues guitar players talk about amongst themselves. They've established a standard of excellence, and they talk about it. And so the rest of us can peek in on what that's like. These are 6 of the masters. Some of you might not have heard of, but the 3 friends and Tommy talk about these guys. And at the end, I'll tell you who the rest of the 5 would put their guitar down to watch. So up here we have Otis Rush. Does anybody know who Otis Rush is or has heard of him? The great, okay, Otis Rush. Johnny Winter. B.B. King, of course. Now, Magic Sam, is that at all familiar with you? Magic Sam was a contemporary of Otis Rush and Buddy Guy. He died young, but a brilliant guitar player. Stevie Ray Vaughan, everyone's heard of. A master, and Buddy Guy. So these 6 provide a standard, and the case will be made that B.B. King is the master of masters.